Hi, this week on my podcast, I have Joe Genovesi. Is that the correct way?
That's correct. Yes.
And Joe does pre-draft loans for professional athletes. So Joe, just tell me a little bit about your company. I know your company does other things as well, and just introduce yourself to my audience.
Yeah. So my firm is called Balance Bridge Funding. We launched about 6 years ago. We do various things in specialty finance. One of which is we make advances to attorneys on settled case fees. We could also offer that to their clients, again, on settled cases only. And we make loans to professional athletes against their guaranteed contracts, as well as athletes entering free agency. And as you just mentioned, pre-draft advances. We focus that in just the NFL and NBA. But, for a lack of a better term, we, essentially factor account receivables for, various industries.
So let's talk about that. Let's say there's an NFL player and they are going to be, let's say the 2022 draft, which is next year's draft. Because right now it's July 2021. What factors do you use to decide whether you're actually going to give somebody a pre-draft loan?
Yeah, so in the NFL, we try to keep our advances to just players that we project to be in the first 3 rounds of the draft. So we track all the different draft boards and do a lot of internal work. And of course, it's not an exact science, so we could be wrong, but we try to limit our advances to just players that we believe will be first 3 round picks in the upcoming draft.
Okay, and so why are you saying it's only the first 3 rounds? Let's talk about that.
So the first 3 rounds, my understanding is those are the players that after being drafted, they get guaranteed contracts. So they have some guaranteed money coming after the draft. So we just feel that it's a more conservative and safer subset of players to make advances to. I should say we also, we wouldn't make an advance today for a player in next year's draft. We want to wait until they've officially declared for the draft and given up their eligibility for college. So again, to be a little more conservative. And also by then, obviously, the draft boards are a little bit more, I don't use the word exact because it's never exact, but with time, obviously, the draft order becomes a little more clear. So we feel a little more comfortable with our projections closer to the draft.
Right. So you do the loan directly to the player, correct? Not to the agent.
Correct. But, a lot of the leads come from the agents or, someone, close to that player. But in my experience has been that a lot of times it is from the agent. And, as they are, out doing their own work, trying to get clients themselves, they come across players who might mention that they do need an advance. And that's something that the agent tries to take care of for them as a way to secure them as a client for themselves.
Gotcha. So when you do a pre-draft loan, what is the maximum you can do based on the round? And then what are the terms of that agreement? Like, when does the player have to pay it back? And we'll talk about the NBA next, but.
Sure. So it really varies. But we try to be pretty conservative with those advances. We never want it to be too large. I mean, kind of a very loose rule of thumb is we never want to do more than $100,000 advance, but it could be, significantly less than that. There are exceptions to that rule. If there's a player that, we think is an absolute lock to be a top 5 or top 10 pick, and we know they're going to get, millions of dollars in signing bonus, we, would make an exception and make a larger advance of them. But, a lot of the players that we make advances to, at least it's told to us that the reason they're coming for an advance is for, for living expense, maybe to get an apartment near a training facility, or to hire or to join, a quarterback camp, or, just a personal trainer or a nutritionist. Just different things are going to help their, draft position. So there's very rarely a need for a much larger advance than that anyways, although there obviously is always exceptions to that. And as far as the repayment of it, again, it could vary, but a lot of times we want to structure it so that we can be repaid with their sign-on bonus. And then again, once they are drafted, and it's determined if they have guaranteed salary and if they're a lock to make the team, we are willing sometimes to either all or a portion of what we're due, we will spread out over the first few paychecks of their first season as well. And in some instances, once a player is drafted and signs their contract, they can sometimes qualify for bank financing, which would take us out as well.
Okay, so let's say player comes to you in, let's say, January, which is normally the time, and they get a loan for, let's say, $60,000. Okay, obviously you're going to charge a percent. What's the percent that you charge on that, like $60,000?
Sure. So generally our advances are at 12% annualized, so 1% per month.
1% per month. So how much is it going to cost the player to borrow $60,000 if they get drafted in April? It usually takes about a month or so to negotiate the deal. So they really can't get back until, let's say, the end of June, hypothetically. Sometimes it takes till the end of July, depending.
Sure. So in that example, it would be 6 months of interest. So 6% on the advance amount, $60,000. There's also some fees on the front end, usually somewhere between around 4% in fees on the advance amount. So, the $60,000 advance, they would net, in that example, 96% of 60,000, and then they would pay 1% per month for the 6 months that's outstanding on the 60,000.
So what would that total amount be?
Yeah, I apologize. I don't have a calculator.
I've got a calculator. $60,000 times what, 4% you're saying in fees?
Yes.
So that would be $2,400. Okay. Then how do you calculate the 1% on the 60,000?
Yeah. So it'd be $600 a month, right?
So 600 times, let's see.
6 is 3,600 plus 24. So $6,000. So the total cost would be 10% in that example.
Okay.
Right.
Yep. I'm just letting people, so it would cost them $6,000, right?
Yes.
Okay. So
in that example.
So I want players to understand that when you do a pre-draft loan and then you repay it, it is going to cost you.
Sure. It's not necessarily cheap money. Yeah, absolutely not. And as you understand, there's some risk to the lender. I mean, the player, might not get drafted in the top 3 rounds or might not get drafted at all because of some behavioral issue or, a bad showing at the combine or a bad showing at a post-college bowl game or, the senior bowl, whatever it might be. So there's numerous, factors in there that, there's some real risk to the funding company, or in this case, us. But I will say that, my knowledge of the industry, we are the lowest cost option in the space. I think most other people who offer this service are charging, significantly more than that.
Okay. Like what is the norm in the industry?
I don't know if there's an exact norm. I've heard of groups that charge, 30, 35+% annualized or more. So, our rates, relative to that are obviously very, very reasonable. But yet it's still, obviously, as you can tell, much more than a bank might charge.
Right.
So, but again, a bank wouldn't necessarily make an advance to a pre-draft player because it doesn't, fit their profile at that point in time.
Yeah. So, and that's why they would go to you, because the bank, they don't have income coming in. They don't have prior, obviously tax returns, or their tax wouldn't be enough maybe to justify the loan.
And at that point in time, they don't have an income. They haven't yet been drafted. Right. They haven't yet signed a contract. Right. So they just wouldn't fit, a bank's profile.
So what happens if the player, the most common reason why a player drops in the draft is a medical reason. Like all of a sudden they get medical tests and they find out they've got some weird heart problem or something, and it scares the teams and they drop. They might still get drafted, but they drop. What are the terms in the agreement if they don't get drafted when you projected, or they can't repay you, or they don't make the team? What do you do?
Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of why there's an expense on the relative to a bank, a relatively higher expense on the loan amount is because that's a risk that we are taking. Our advance are based off of their projected income for playing in the NFL, whether that be a signing bonus or their contract. And if they were to not play in the NFL or never get a contract, they wouldn't be obligated to repay the advance amount.
They wouldn't be.
Now no. Yeah, that's correct. We do purchase some insurance policies around the advance. It's different for established players. So a guy who's currently in the NFL and wants to get an advance against his guaranteed contract, or a free agent in the NFL, we're able to get different policies for them than we can for a college kid who's entering the draft. But even for the college kid, we will get, death and disability, or permanent disability. So if that medical happening that you mentioned were to occur, where they maybe don't just drop in a draft, but it's because of their heart condition, they can no longer play football, we would then try to exercise the policy and get repaid that way.
Oh, so you just insure against a potential, disaster kind of thing.
Yeah.
Has that happened to you or not?
No, knock on wood. We get policies on all of our positions, but we've never had to exercise any of them.
Okay. All right. So now let's move to the NBA players. What rounds are you willing to give an NBA player a pre-draft loan?
Sure. So again, in the NBA, we're looking for just our projected first round players.
Only first round. Why only first round?
Well, because, unlike NFL, there only is 2 rounds in the NBA as opposed to, 7 in the NFL. So if we're wrong with the second rounder in the NFL and he actually goes in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, there's a very high probability we still get repaid. In fact, we've had every 100% of the time. In the NBA, if we project somebody in the second round and they slip beyond that, it means they don't get drafted, which is, a much worse position for us and a lot more risk. So, even players that are projected to be first rounders can drop. I mean, it obviously, fortunately hasn't happened to us, but, there's plenty of guys historically who have been projected first rounder a few weeks or months prior to the draft. And then, on draft night, go undrafted. So to protect against that, we try to make our advances to just the projected first round from our internal projections.
Yeah. So my next question is, so I've always been a big advocate of, listen, stay at your university, work out with your weight coach, go to your training room, go to your football field, because in my opinion, they have better coaches and better staff and better strength staff and more training staff, doctors available if you need it. They have excellent training rooms. And gyms don't have that because it's very expensive to have those kind of facilities. You have access to footballs, just everything you need. So I guess I always encourage people to stay in school and to work out at their facility. So what's your take on that?
Well, there are facilities that are designed specifically for players who are entering the various drafts in different sports, or, for professional athletes in the off season, or for guys that are playing overseas and trying to make the transition. So, there are facilities that are totally geared to the young athlete who is looking to get drafted. And some of them do go there. And the reason why I even know they exist is, we've made some advances to professional athletes who have purchased these types of facilities, and the advance they wanted from us was to help with that investment. So there are places that exist, and there are, special camps for, a quarterback, where they can go get special training that might not be available at their institute or their college or university. And same thing for, across different sports. So there are examples of why it would make sense for a player to leave campus and to go, focus on training. And then, there's other reasons too. I mean, maybe they want to get off the campus because there's just too many buddies there, or girlfriends there, or, easy access to partying and whatnot. And they want to go someplace where they can just be totally focused on training.
Right. So now this is just completely switching gears, but because of
Sure.
all new NIL laws, what's your opinion on what if a player calls you and says, I want to get an advance based on what I think I can get, what opportunities I think I can get in the NIL space?
Sure. So, our in-house counsels have been doing some research on that for us to see if that's a space that we can begin making advances on. And early signs point to that. Yes, it seems like we would be able to, but we haven't done anything yet there, and we haven't committed to do anything yet there. We want to make sure that our advances wouldn't in any way jeopardize their eligibility to play, because there is some gray areas on what players can really get there. So we wouldn't be able to make advances against projected professional earnings, because in whether the NFL, NBA, whatever, because, well, first of all, it's outside of our risk profile. We wouldn't want to give a sophomore who might be 2 years away from joining the professional ranks, because a lot can change in 2 years. But against their NIL earnings, I don't think, because we always try to, whether any of our investments within sports or outside of sports, be very low on the risk profile. So I don't think we would be interested in making advances against projected or potential NIL earnings. I think what we would look at as a space is if a player had an agreement with whatever, a local car dealership or whoever it might be with, that says they will get paid X dollars per month or whatever it might be, we'd be willing to advance them the future months of that guaranteed cash flow. Mm-hmm. And then we would wait for the payment. But I don't think we would go get a player who says, I think I will get these, or I'm going to try to get these. That's not something that we're interested in.
Yeah. The other thing is just so you know, the state laws all say a player can't receive money from somebody without doing something. So I'm wondering, and it would be interesting to run this by, a university's athletics department, lawyer or compliance department, or the general counsel at the university, because receiving a loan is an interesting that is advancing against your NIL money might be an issue. And it's
sure. I think, and again, I'd have to confirm this, but I think that player would still be earning money from an NIL agreement for whatever service they're providing to, the other side of the NIL agreement. So, if they're making appearances or doing whatever they're doing for that company to earn that funding, what we're doing is we're just giving we're accelerating or factoring that account receivable. So we're not necessarily giving them a loan or money for doing nothing. Right. We're just, he has an account receivable now, and we are, advancing against that.
Loan or something. They're almost doing a.
Yeah. So it's slightly different than us just going to a player and giving them a loan because we think they'll go get some NIL agreements. It's, they already have it in place, and we are factoring that account receivable. And again, I have to do a lot of research on it. Maybe that is against the rules, but my thought is that is why we would be able to make an advance.
Yeah.
It's one step removed.
I think it's going to depend on state law.
Sure.
And university rules. They all have different ones. That's what I'm finding. Mm-hmm. But if any of my compliance friends are listening today, give me a call. I'd be curious to know what you think about this.
I'd love to know your take on that. My thought is that there has to be some uniformity from university to university of how they're going to handle these things. Otherwise, there would be unfair advantages to some universities, right?
It's the state laws all different. The state laws are all different. Some states are more restrictive than others. California's law is the least restrictive, honestly, of all the state laws that I've looked at. But I do think that there will be a federal law pretty soon, but it's probably not going to be until closer to the fall or the end of the year. Mm-hmm. They did a lot of hearings in Congress in June, but they did not come up with a bill that they thought was what was encompassing everything. Because a lot of student athletes were not just concerned about NIL, they were also concerned about health and safety. And there was kind of a debate in Congress on whether or not to include health and safety regulations in the bill as well as NIL. So I think because both of those issues were raised by the student athletes, that they are going to create a bill that maybe encompasses both of those issues. I think the NCAA and some people in the NIL space just wanted him to deal with just NIL alone, because they knew on July 1st, dates were coming where some state laws were going into effect. So the NCAA just said, look, we're just right now, it's not a violation as of July 1st for you to monetize your name, image, and likeness. You need to go by your state and university rules. So that's what they did.
Okay.
So right now it's kind of all over the map, but it's okay. What I do is, if I get a student athlete from a certain school, I deal with their general counselor at their university or their compliance department. And I talk to their Department of State just to make sure I'm clear on the laws, and just make sure any deals that when we're going to approach a brand, that we run that brand by the school, the general counsel, and the Department of State, so that I know that we're compliant. Because I frankly don't want to waste my time, get a deal for a client, and then be told, oh, sorry, that violates our state law, our school law. And I even talked to one school yesterday, and their general counsel and their compliance department disagreed on an issue, and it had to do with restaurants. So a lot of restaurants serve alcohol.
Okay.
They're not a bar, but they serve alcohol. So I said, what are you going to do when a student athlete gets a deal with the restaurant, which they like food, but they also, like, let's say it's a pizza place and they serve beer.
Yeah.
So the compliance department didn't like any alcohol being served. The general counsel said it was okay. So already just one, and it's not like I had a deal for the person. I just wanted clarity on the issue because I know it's going to come up. And so now your situation is another issue. I want clarity on the issue so I know how to, navigate for the client.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And to me, if you just find out from the beginning what the rules are and follow them, it's a lot easier. Then you don't have a lot of training. And I think that's where student athletes need counsel. They need attorneys involved. I'm an attorney, and I've been doing it for 32 years, because there's a lot of things that they put in contracts. If you don't read it carefully, you could really hurt yourself, because a lot of brands try to put in exclusive deals. And then you maybe did a really small deal for a small amount of money and gave away everything to an apparel company. And now you can't talk to any other apparel companies. So there's a lot of concerns I have for people who have never done this and don't understand the kinds of problems that pop up. And I don't blame brands for thinking I want an exclusive deal either, because, if you are working with Pepsi, they don't want you to work with Coke. I understand that. But if you want me to do an exclusive deal with Pepsi, then it better be a lot of money.
Yeah.
Or a short period of time, 1 month, you know what I mean? You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot going on in the NIL space that, and I warn student athletes, please be careful about what you're signing. Your university cannot help you. All the state laws say that. You need an outside person to help you. I mean, this is not something you should navigate on your own. Just like these loans, you shouldn't really navigate that on your own. You need somebody to help you, right?
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. So, it's been an interesting year for sure. So, are you enjoying your summer, or is it really hot where you are?
Lately, it's been really hot, uncomfortable, but it's it's still summertime, so it's still nice. How about you?
Oh, well, I've had a really great summer, actually. I just got back from Hawaii, and
nice.
We live up at Shaver Lake, so I just go kayaking every day. And it does get hot, though, up here. From about 4 to 6, it's hot. So I usually hit the lake about 6. It's
nice. What does hot mean? Where you are?
Well, down in Fresno, it's because I'm about 45 minutes from Fresno. Fresno is like 105, 100.
Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah, it's awful. Up here, it's been more like, 90, which is still really hot.
Okay, still warm. Yeah, still hot.
I think this week it's supposed to get down to 84 maybe. So, but that's in the heat of the day, like 4 o'clock, it gets really hot. What about you? Where are you?
Yeah, similar. Actually, I was walking around on Monday, And it said it was, I think, 91, 92, but I looked, it said feels like 106. And it felt like 140. I mean, I was dying just walking down the street. So yeah, it's been pretty brutal.
Yeah. So where are you located?
Outside of Philadelphia.
Okay, yeah. So you got the humidity.
Yeah, pretty bad. So
yeah. Okay, well, it was great talking to you. Is there anything
thank you so much.
Share with athletes or parents or universities? What else would you?
I think you said the most important thing is to make sure you have, help and counsel or at least someone helping you navigate all these issues, whether it's, looking into NIL contracts or if you are entering the draft and, are looking for an advance for whatever reason. But I think it's always really, really important to make sure you have, the right people in your corner helping you make decisions.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, thanks for being on my show, and great getting to know you.
Same here.
All right.
Thank you so much. Take care now.
All right. You too.
Bye-bye.